We're going to continue another 10 minutes in Sichos Haran. Okay, so we're holding by Chav Zayin, 27. Continuing, yeah. So Nachman says the following. He says, Afal Pi, Shudim Tzurich Li Azuris Gudem Oid Ma'oid V'Voides Hashem. He says, even though that person has to be a Zudis, a Zudis is, do things very quickly, a lot of enthusiasm, when it comes to Voides Hashem. That you have to, constantly, at all times, just be zudis, on guard, do things with enthusiasm, with avoidance Hashem as much as possible. He says because because the main thing is, action, to be able to complete, things in avoidance Hashem. He explains Lulmud Harbe to study a lot, Velas mitzvahs Harbe to be able to do a lot of mitzvahs, Spala, Scham Harbe, to be able to, spal and the Scham Tashem Harbe, Lishbach Liba, the Fortis Baruch, to be able to pour out your heart, as much as possible to Hashem. But he always was a short in avoidance Hashem, and similar type of avoidance Hashem. So he's saying, even though that a person has to, be do things with zrizas, in all areas of Avodas Hashem. He's going to explain. Continuing, he says, he says, he says, even though that's true, don't be nivel. Nivel means don't be overwhelmed. Okay? Continuing, he says, he says, when you see in Sforim, Sforim Kedoshim, different, in unim of avodas Hashem, yeah. He says, Alti nivel, don't be overwhelmed, anyway, because of this, limer, by saying to yourself, Musa ichal l'kaim achas mahayim unim haluli. When will I be able to, start, do one of these unim that you see in these sfurim, the Kolshkan kill him, and this is a person saying to himself, Kolshkan, all of them. He says, don't be overwhelmed when you see things that's, you don't know when you'll be able to begin such a type of, avoidance Hashem, even though it looks like you want to do it, but, so he's saying, don't be overwhelmed. Continuing, he says, Kitzurch leval yim avoil lachtev hakol b'vas. He says, because a person has to be, not overwhelmed, to be able to try to grab everything in one bite, and bas achas, yeah. Anyway, he says, rather this is how you do it. Leilach benachas, go with nachas, ba'adroga, ma'at ma'at. Obviously, these are all things that we all know, but look at this chizuk that we're getting over here. He's telling us, in areas of avodas Hashem, even though you have to be, the reasons, because that's the only way how you be able to grow the avodas Hashem. But he says, don't be overwhelmed, and even if you see things that you don't know how you'll be able to do it, he says, don't be overwhelmed. He says, he's leaving now a marshal. He says, kamoi. He says, he says, he says, don't be overwhelmed and become confused. That you don't want to try to do everything. Don't be overwhelmed and you're going to try to grab everything in one bite, and and because of that you might get totally confused and not even begin. Yeah, he says, he says, he says, just like when by a sreifa, a fire. Imagine there's a fire in the house. Because of the everyone's overwhelmed. You end up grabbing what you don't even need because there's a fire. Everyone's running out, and you just grab. And then when you get out, you realize that you took the things that you don't even need because you were so overwhelmed. He says, rather the proper way is in avodas Hashem to do things with levels, slowly. Continuing. He says, he says, and if sometimes you see, you can't do anything, right? Right now, you can't do anything in Avodah Hashem. He says, Ma lasais, Ma lasais, what could you do? Oinus, Rachamona Patra. If you're an Oinus, again, we're talking to people over here that are working in Avodah Hashem. But he's saying, Oinus, if you can, Rachamona Patra, then Hashem, patches you. You're continuing. He says, Yargal Atzmoy, but a person should accustom himself. Yargal Atzmoy, Lichsoiv, to have, Kasifim, Eliskagaya, Listoik, Tumid, Albis Baruch, to constantly have yearnings and Kasifim to Hashem. He explains, Ki Ashtoik is Vakasifim, Ba'atzmom him, the Worm Gedol, Ma'oid, the Rachamona, Liba Boya. He says, these Kasifim and these Ashtoikis, in itself, this is great, the Worm Gedol Ma'oid, and Hashem, Rachmana, Liba Boya, Hashem looks for the heart. Yeah, but anyway, he says, now, this is Reb Nosson explaining, in regarding to this, subject, there's many conversations and stories that, beautiful stories that we heard. And which are great eitzes and good eitzes, on how to accustom oneself in ways of avoiding Hashem. Anyway, he explains this Reb Nosson speaking. He says he says, but we overheard this from Reb Nachman, in conversations, but Reb Nosson is saying it's very hard to put these things into writing. And he's saying he finishes off he says someone that's smart and he genuinely wants to do avodas Hashem, he'll be able to understand a little bit. Okay, so that's the end of this Sichos Haran 27. Trying to give a little small summary of it. So Nachman was explaining that even though a person has to be a zaris, in avodas Hashem, zaris godel ma'oid, he says. Yeah, let's not fool ourselves. He says you have to be a zaris. It means you have to have alacrity, but this comes from, first you need to have an awareness of what you have to do, right? And then you have to, not be lazy, work on yourself. But he's explaining, and he says, he makes it clear that the ikar is asiyah, limud harbe, las mitzvahs harbe, l'spanel, l'schalam harbe, right? But he says, don't be nivul. Nivul means don't be overwhelmed, because when you're overwhelmed, and you try to do everything in one shot, he says, then that can cause you to lose it all. So he says, and he gives a marshal, just like when there's a fire, everyone's in panic, and you just grab whatever you could, and you run out, and then you end up many times you grab things that you don't even need. And he says, basically the way to do it is you do slowly, level to level, but the main thing is to have this kagiyim, shtoikikis, to be able to do the things that you're learning about, in these Sfarim HaKadoshim. But he says, because Rachamona Liba Boy, Hashem is looking at the heart, right? That's one of our Ani Mammons, the Munashlema Shabbos Barushamo Yidei Kol Masav V'nei Adam Chol Machshavosa, right? Hashem knows all our actions and our thoughts. So that's one of the Ani Mammons. And that's that, okay? So this is obviously a tremendous, just chizuk, eitzes, chizuk. We'll do one more, yeah? Chof Ches 28, small one, we'll do it, yeah? Continuing, he says, Roy Adam, he says that it's proper that a person, that he should go through, the Yelech Bezeh Oilam, while he's in this world, he should go through, the Chol HaSfarim HaKadoshim, all the Sfarim HaKadoshim, V'lilmot Kilam, and he should learn them all, so that he should be able to be in all places. Continuing, he says, just like you find these, wealthy, sarim, royal, kings and wealthy people, that they travel, all over the world, right? And he continues, it might seem like so as rabbis al zeh kadash yichel acher ken lesbor v'lomer shoy b'medinas k'moy shederech hasarim lesbor. just like he said, and we see that they spend a lot of money, on these expeditions, on these trips, on these vacations, and they like to, tell their friends, how they traveled everywhere. He continues, and they say, I used to live in Varsha, I was in Varsha, Warsaw. Yeah, this is Nachman's time. He's explaining, just like these wealthy people, they travel, and then they like to go and brag and say, I went here, I went there, I went there. Continuing, he says, he says, so too, it's proper that a person in Olam Hazeh should do similar that he should do the same with all areas in Torah. Continuing, he says, so that you should be able to brag, in Olam Haba, Shahoyu b'chol mokum dahayni b'chol asvarim hakdoshim kanal, that in Olam Haba you'd be able to say, I went to all the different svarim. Yeah. Continuing, he says, Ela Osid, and then b'Olam Haba he says, Maskirin Oisoi, they're going to remind you kol mashalomad b'Olam Hazeh. Everything you learned on Hazeh, they're going to remind you. That's the end of 28. So, do a little sum up. This is a very, very good chizuk. Because this actually builds on Sichos Haran Chavov, 26. We learned it previously, where he explains about shich, forgetting, and he says that many times a person doesn't want to learn because he's going to forget. But he explained. He gives the mashal of you have people that were hired to fill up barrels, and the barrel had a hole in the bottom. So the tipshim say, what's the point of filling up the barrel? Everything's going to go right out. And he explains so they end up doing nothing. The chachamim, he says, look, I'm getting paid by the day, and they don't take away my wage day by day. What do I have if I don't remember? If everything falls out, right? I'm going to do mine, and I'm going to get my reward. And he explains that's the same thing with learning Torah, even though you go through Svarim, and the main thing is while you're learning it, you should just be able to understand what you're learning. But you go through the Svarim, and then he's saying even if you don't remember it, Olam Haba they remind you all. Olam Haba that's when live, it's going to be nitzchias, eternal. And we're going to have whatever we acquire now in Olam Hazeh. So this is how I would sum up this Sichos around 28, where he's saying just like the wealthy people. I mean, we see it today, Nebuch. I'm saying Nebuch because people don't have the eitzes. We need the eitzes. But Nebuch people, they go and they travel, which is beautiful because, Hashem has a beautiful world and Hashem wants us to, explore. But Hashem wants us to do it with the framework of the guidance of the tzaddikim. But basically, you have people, they travel, they want to be everywhere, but they're not connecting, why, So he's saying that do that, but in Torah, in Svarim, all the Svarim. Go through all the Svarim HaKadoshim, any sefer a person wants, whether it's Chaim Salvavis, Mesilas Yesharim, Sharei Teshuvah, all the Musar Svarim. Yeah, obviously, Kala Tarakula, which is, Chumash, and then you take Navi, you take Mishnah, and Bavli, and everything. But sometimes, many times, if you didn't have the proper chinuch, then, you may need, most likely, you need the Musar Svarim to revive you. But you go through all the Svarim, and Olam Haba, with this Eitzah, will be able to be in this spar, and say, I went through this sefer, I went through that sefer, I went through that sefer. And like this, you go through all the sphere, all the svar. Should all be zeicha to be able to realize that Hashem gave us the whole Torah. And all the tzaddikim from every generation, the true tzaddikim, if the tzaddik emes, that means that they already learned the whole Torah. Because that's a tzaddik emes. Otherwise, now it's not tzaddik emes. Tzaddik emes, these are the svarim kadoshim that Rav Nachman is referring to. So if these tzaddikim wrote new svarim, they're obviously building on the previous svarim, because that's how true tzaddikim, write the svarim. That's how we pass in Shulchan Aruch. It's all built on, Shulchan Aruch, and then you have the Rishonim, and then you have the, Shulchan Aruch it's all pulling from, Shas. Then you have Achroinim, but everything has to go, everything, the reference. So, we should all be zoichet to somehow connect all the svarim. This Nolam Ha will be able to, say, look, I went everywhere, and they're going to remind you everything. This is Eitzah. Eitzah is how to be very, very, very wealthy in Olam Haba. And we know the bracha comes with Torah learning as well, over here also. Let's remind ourselves, there's three things that come with pain. This is Gemara and Brachas. Shimon Bar Yochai Omer. Shalosh Devarim, three things, Lo nitna ela b'yisirim. Comes with Yisirim. The alien, it's Torah, Eretz Yisrael, and Olam Haba. Be painful, but Abol Tar B'Sayin Oisai. Okay, I'm going to stop over here.